All right, now that the dust is settled, wanted to go over some of our top 5 takeaways from the Google Search API leaks. Now, big preface it is that just because it's something that's included in the API leaks does not necessarily mean it's used as a ranking factor. However, these are some of our biggest takeaways and some of the biggest changes that we're going to be making to our strategies moving forward based on the information found in the API leaks. So the first is something that's probably the biggest takeaway from this whole thing is that Google is clearly using clicks more aggressively than what we probably even thought as part of the ranking factors, right? If we just take a look at references to Nav Boost, which is Google's system for getting feedback on click data, it's referenced 130 different times in this documentation. You can see here, it looks like there's all types of variables, clicks, bad clicks, good clicks, click interval, total clicks. It is very clear that they're using clicks more heavily than what we had ever even thought of in terms of getting feedback on the actual search results. So it appears that optimizing for clicks right might have stronger impacts than we once previously thought. And Nav Boost is the system that they're using to inform all of this, and they're referencing it a whole bunch in the Google documentation. That's the first takeaway. The next is that freshness really matters, right? And this is something that we've known at GoFish Digital. We've done different tests around this and seen very strong results from updating freshness. This was verified in the Search API leak. So you can see here in Mike King's analysis, he found that they're using 3 different variables, right? They're using the byline date, they're using the semantic date. They're really leaning heavily on the dates used in content. Our belief is that if they think the content is outdated, then that Google feels like it can't trust the content, right? If you were trying to rank an article for best smartphones, Google wouldn't feel like it could trust an article from 2020. It would need an article to be written from present day. So freshness really matters. We're seeing evidence of that in the API leaks as well. The next is that we believe Google is actually using more than just an individual piece of anchor text to judge the context of links. So this is something our founder Dan Hinckley found. If you look, there's actually 2 different attributes. There's full left context and full right context. And then when you look at the description here, it actually talks about, hey, the full context, that these are not written out in the link logs. Basically is Google looking at text around where the anchor text is, to the left and to the right, and then trying to interpret what the actual context is. So even if you just use click here, Google might be using the sentence before and the sentence after to understand what that click here link really meant and what the anchor text could be. So that's another really interesting takeaway I thought from the API links. So even if you're not specifically using anchor text, Google still might be able to figure out what it is. The next I thought was super interesting. This was from an article on Search Engine Land that kind of unpacked the Google API leaks, and they found that Google's using a URL history variable. This was Andrew Ansley, and he found that the URL history variable, Google's actually showcasing that they might keep 20 different versions of a given web page in the index that they can reference. So if you go in the API links, you can see that URL history here, and they actually say if a document has more than 20 changes, we only keep the last 20 changes. So Google might be keeping historical references of your content in their servers, right? It's actually something we've seen at GoFish Digital, where even on our own title tags, we would change them, but we would see Google still using ones that we had moved on from, surfacing in the actual search results. Well, that would explain it, right? Google kept a historical record of the URL, and then maybe based on click data, they were saying, hey, we're going to use the old version of your title tag, even though we've changed it, because we still have that recorded in the index. So I thought that was fascinating. Google might be keeping up to 20 different versions of URLs stored. The final one is that Google is almost certainly using some type of topical authority and definitely some overall site authority metrics. We've seen that once again in the variables here, the much talked about site authority variable, where Google says they haven't used domain authority, but here is directly referenced site authority. So it does appear that they at least have a variable to indicate they could use some type of overall site authority metric here. As well, they also, I think, really care about what a site's core area of focus is. And that's referenced in several different variables throughout site focus score. how much a site is focused on an individual topic. So they want you to kind of claim expertise in a certain vertical and not stray too far from it. And then site embedding, right? And embeddings are these really interesting concepts where they're taking your text and then they're converting it into a numeric value. Well, that could be a way that they use to measure how far you're going away from your topical authority, right? They take your text, they convert it to numbers, and they say, hey, a lot of content kind of is all kind of clustered together. That means they're staying within their target kind of focus area. Oh, we see that for this individual site, they have a lot of content that kind of moves away from from where we have it plotted out in the vector database. That means they're going away from their topical authority. So Google, from these variables, seems like they really care about topical authority. They really care about site focus, and that's kind of referenced in some of these variables here. So those are some of our biggest takeaways from the Search API leaks. Would love to hear that any of you have found, but some really interesting insights, and I'm really excited to see some of the new testing and the new findings that we're going to see as people continue to uncover these links and find new insights.